sick of all the things you do, yeah, I think that you're losing sight. Yeah, you can turn your back on me, I don't really mind, but don't look back on me at no other time. Cause when you're back on me, yeah, I know that it don't feel right. Hey, sometimes you just make me want it. Hey, sometimes I just wanna die.
We need a doctor. It is.
Some things never seem to change, and every day I stay the same. Moonlight swelling through the trees, it never seems to wane. Sometimes I feel like I'm a silhouette, like my imitation leads me towards regret. Sometimes I wish that we had never met. I'm faking every step.
Howdy. We're live. We're live again. Apologies for it being so long in between. Got the flu. Bad week to get the flu. Right after just a wild weekend in college football that we had, I guess, what is that now? 2 weekends ago or so. Yeah, we're live again. We're ready to get going. Got a ton to talk about, right? A lot of stuff to catch up on. Today's episode's going to be, I don't know, it might be a long one. So strap in. Let's get it. We're going to start real simply. Just reaction to the rankings, the final rankings. I haven't gotten an opportunity to do this. Again, got sick. Apologize for my voice being a little scratchy at the moment. But final rankings came out. And, the committee continued its, I guess it finally was consistent with one thing, that it's completely inconsistent constantly. We talked about this before these rankings came out, that this committee has just been all over the place. Nobody could understand, what the metrics were. Was it head-to-head? Was it strength of schedule? Was it strength of record? Was it FPI? Was it common opponents? Was it your best losses or your best wins, or what are the criteria? And in the end, the committee continued to be inconsistent with its final ranking. So let's just look at them real quick here. Indiana, Ohio State. Indiana jumps Ohio State, getting the win in the Big Ten championship game, but Ohio State doesn't fall too far. Then Georgia, Texas Tech, Oregon, Ole Miss, Texas A&M, Oklahoma. Alabama doesn't drop. We'll talk about that in a second. And then really, the big thing was BYU dropped down to 12. And they flipped Miami and Notre Dame, which means Miami gets in the playoff. Notre Dame does not. If we scroll way down here, we find our two other playoff teams, Tulane and James Madison, because there's a team missing here, and that's Duke. Duke wins the ACC, so Virginia falls and is no longer a champion of their conference. And Tulane and James Madison both get in as the next two highest ranked conference champions. So again, 5 ranked conference champions, doesn't matter what conference they are. And so we have 2 group of 5, group of 6, however you want to call them, non-power conference champions in Tulane and James Madison both getting in. Tulane with 2 losses, including a loss, by the way, to Ole Miss, who they're going to play in the first round. So, yeah. All right, let's get into it. So the first thing everybody probably is wondering what I'm going to say, and that is, what happened here? Alabama, Miami, Notre Dame, BYU to an extent. A lot of conversation with these teams coming down the wire, where they were ranked, what would happen. Notre Dame ends up being kind of the oddball out. Ironically, not a lot of complaints about BYU, but we're going to get to that in a second because it is an issue. There should have been probably more complaints about BYU. or at least maybe some complaints about Alabama. But Miami jumps Notre Dame. And Miami gets in the playoff. Notre Dame does not. And this has sparked vigorous debate online. Notre Dame felt so slighted. I don't know if it's come out exactly how the voting process went or how the team made the full decision, but with player input, they decided to sit out and essentially boycott the bowl games because of this slight. Right? They definitely would have been playing if it was a playoff game, but they decided not to play a bowl game now because they are no longer in the playoff. So that was huge. Miami fans are saying, finally, we've been ranked behind Notre Dame all this time, and we always had the same record, and we had the head-to-head. Why was that happening? And I think that's a fair argument. And Alabama does not drop for getting the doors blown off against Georgia. All right, let's start with what might be a hot take in the Notre Dame community, okay? And I'm a member of it. I'm a huge fan of Notre Dame. It's pretty well documented on this channel. Miami should be ranked higher than Notre Dame. That is true. And I think that was fair that Miami was ranked Notre Dame. The problem is the inconsistency with the committee. They've been ranked. They both finished their seasons. And you then switch them. Let's go back 1 week. Week 14. Notre Dame's 10, Miami's 12, BYU's 11. Why at this point does Miami not get ranked over Notre Dame? They have the same record. If you were going to do it, they should have moved Miami above Notre Dame a long time ago. Should have happened, but it didn't. And they wait until the last week of the season, and it does feel like a rug pull. Because not only do they get swapped the last week with a team that they didn't beat, if you look at the last 2 weeks, Notre Dame is ranked 9th. Week 13. They are ranked 9th. They're ahead of Alabama. They're ahead of BYU. And they're ahead of Miami. Let's watch what happens over the next 2 weeks. So in 2 weeks, week 14, all of a sudden, Alabama is ahead of Notre Dame. BYU and Miami don't move. So Notre Dame drops 1 spot the week before the final rankings, and then they drop another the last week. Well, maybe they lost or they didn't look good, right? Let's see how Notre Dame looked in those weeks. All right. Here's the weeks and what happened. They beat Stanford 49-20, and if you actually look at this box score, it was essentially like 49-6 or 42-6, I think. We got 21-14. Yeah, that's 35 plus 5. Yeah. So they're winning 42-6 at one point in that game. A couple junk time touchdowns against backups at the end. So that's this week, and then they don't play. So in 2 weeks, where they beat their opponent 49-20, it was 42-6 before they put backups in, and a week they were idle, didn't play, they drop 2 spots in the rankings and out of the college football playoff, getting past. Let's take a look at Alabama football. Well, what did they do to jump Notre Dame? They beat Auburn by 7. Auburn's a 5-7 team. Stanford's a 4-8 team. Okay. They beat Auburn by 7, and they needed a fourth quarter kind of last-minute touchdown in order to secure that victory. And they get the victory. Don't get me wrong. Winning games is difficult. Alabama's got 2 losses. Notre Dame's got 2 losses. It's not easy to go undefeated. There's literally one team this season that's undefeated. Okay? So, Alabama beats Auburn by 7 in the fourth quarter. And then what else did they do here? Oh, they got beat 28-7 by Georgia. So Notre Dame loses 2 spots to an Alabama team by beating Stanford 42-6, then 49-20, and not playing any game. That is atrocious. It is. I fully understand why, if you are a Notre Dame fan, like I am, you are kind of furious. How do you drop 2 spots, winning a game 42-6, 49-20 final score, and the team that jumped you in Alabama, because that's the original team that they jumped, beat an Auburn team by 7 at the fourth quarter and got boat raced in the SEC championship game? They did not look good at all. Okay, all right, I can hear you screaming already. I'm sure you're going to be screaming in the comments, but you can't punish Alabama for playing in a bowl game or in a conference championship game. You can. And actually, this is one of the areas where the committee showed once again why they're completely inconsistent and have been all season. Every single team that lost their conference championship game dropped in the rankings. Except for one. Oh, who was that? Who? Huh? I wonder who that was. Yeah, Alabama. There's only one team that lost their conference championship game and didn't drop in the rankings. And that's Alabama. The other thing to bring up that a lot of people are talking about is, okay, what happened here with Miami, Notre Dame, and BYU, right? Because what we were told, and I think this is complete BS, by the way, is, we weren't comparing Notre Dame, BYU, and Miami. We were comparing Notre Dame and Alabama. And because we're not comparing Notre Dame and Miami, well, we're not going to worry about the head-to-head. Head-to-head doesn't matter unless they're literally right next to each other, is what we were told by the committee chair, which completely goes against their own criteria and everything we've known about the committee saying, hey, we look at these teams in groups, in bunches, and then we kind of evaluate from there. Apparently, either what was told to us by the committee chair is that they were looking at Notre Dame with Alabama, maybe Oklahoma as well. And that's why Oklahoma was ahead of Alabama, because Oklahoma has the head-to-head. But Notre Dame wasn't really being compared with Miami and BYU because of this buffer team, which is baloney. The concept that they haven't been comparing these teams all year long is crazy. Absolutely wrong. So let's talk about that buffer team, though. Okay. BYU, we can't punish teams for conference championships, right? Then how does BYU fall down to 12 that moves Miami up, and then now we can compare Notre Dame and Miami? See how we're just making this up as we go? Like, the committee really, I don't know what their plan was. I really feel like they were just making it up, trying to justify. And this was a complaint I had earlier. I said the committee seems to be ranking teams to then justify their own rankings, right? And also with like projections, like really early in the season when they ranked Miami like 10th or I'm sorry, 18th, another, 8 to 10 spots lower than they ended up at here. Why? Because they had just lost 2 games, and I'm pretty sure they thought Miami was going to then lose another game, right? And then they seem to rank other teams higher because they think they're going to do well. BYU drops out, and we have this whole Miami Notre Dame discussion. According to the committee, this is how the committee has said it. Because BYU lost their conference game. I did comment, vibe-based selections is exactly right. Let's look at the conference champions this year. Ohio State loses to Indiana, drops 1 spot. Okay. Alabama doesn't drop. BYU drops a spot and gets jumped by a team that didn't play, Miami. If we go down the list, Virginia, 19th. Where were they last week? 17th. So they dropped 2 spots, 17 to 19. And who were they passed by? Teams that did not play. All right, we go look at week 15. Virginia got jumped by Arizona and Michigan. Neither of those teams played last week. So we have a precedent everywhere else. All other 4 power conference champions, the other 3 besides Alabama, dropped and were passed, except for Ohio State, by teams. We had 2 cases, BYU and Virginia, both losing, got dropped because by teams that were idle, that didn't play. Only Alabama stays. And I hate to break it to you, but it's about to get worse. Not only is that an inconsistency this season in this one ranking, historically we've dropped them. This is a great tweet. It's kind of a long one, so let's look at it together here. I'm going to blow it up there for you to see it a little better. There have only been 2 teams in the history of the college football playoff that have not dropped. Every other conference championship loser has at least dropped a spot. Every single time. Only twice has it not happened. And TCU's a bit of an example. Let's compare TCU to Alabama. Again, great tweet. Go follow this guy. Had a great job. Did a great job with this. So in 2022, here's the scenario that played out and why TCU didn't drop. They were ranked 3. Okay, first of all, ranked higher. Okay. And they lost by 3 points. Not by 21 like Alabama did. Right. Only 3. Only 3-point loss. And the number 4 team got blown out. So it's kind of obvious just right there. Well, okay, you don't need to drop TCU when the team behind them got blown out as well, right? So I guess you drop all of them. That seems a bit weird. The other thing is, if TCU had been dropped to 4, there would have been kind of this weird scenario where Ohio State and Michigan essentially played like 3 weeks in a row. Well, I guess twice in 3 games, which is kind of odd and really... I know they say they're not supposed to like consider matchups that we've already seen. Heck, in this playoff, we've got Ole Miss and Tulane already played this year. Oklahoma, Alabama tonight already played this year. But you can see why you might not drop TCU, since the team behind them was not idle like this year's Alabama situation. or the BYU and Virginia spot either. The team behind them that could have passed them theoretically actually got beat that week as well. So just to keep the consistency, you're going to obviously drop that team out and move somebody else in. Again, all the teams around these three are idle. The Indiana, Ohio State, that's 1 and 2, and they actually played, and then they just swapped them. Okay. BYU and Virginia both drop. And the BYU dropping is what creates Notre Dame and Miami right next to each other. Again, I'm not saying I agree with this. This is the reasoning the committee's given of why they all of a sudden started comparing those two and they had to make the flip. If they would have stayed consistent, what should have probably happened is Alabama should have dropped between Notre Dame and Miami. Notre Dame moves up 1 spot. This would at least have been consistent. I still wouldn't have agreed with it because I would have thought Miami should have been the whole time ranked higher than Notre Dame. And I think both of those teams should have been in. But if they were going to at least be consistent with how they ranked these teams within this final bracket, then Alabama would have dropped below Notre Dame like they were 2 weeks ago before they looked really great against Auburn. We would have gotten right back into this situation. BYU would have dropped. Miami would have been 11. Alabama would have 10. Notre Dame 9. And according to the own committee, that would have been the buffer, and Notre Dame and Alabama get in. But that would have caused some problems. And this is where I do wonder, and I think we might see some stuff come out as time goes on. But I think you're starting to see why Notre Dame might have been really pissed off and might actually think there's some level of corruption in the committee. I don't believe Notre Dame should have sat out their bowl game. I would have loved to watch them again. I would have liked to give them an opportunity to play. But I understand why they sit out. And if there is some real corruption issues, because this is starting to look really sus. If the committee would have stayed consistent in their rankings, just with the conference championship losers across the board, the ACC would not have a representative in the playoff. At all. Remember, Miami gets the at-large bid. They're not a conference champion. Now, did the ACC do that to themselves? 100% they did. This is the ACC's own fault. It's not the college football playoffs' fault when you have bad tiebreakers and your best team does not even get to play in the championship game, and you have 2 teams in the championship game that your best team never got to play because your conference is so big and your scheduling is so screwy. Go watch our previous video on how to fix college football and all the issues that the ACC had. Not having an ACC team in, little suspect, and not validating the head-to-head all season. I think the committee was like, you know what, let's screw Notre Dame. They should have dropped Alabama out. There's plenty of precedent for it. In fact, every other team besides 2022 TCU, which we just went over, every other team that lost a conference championship game, besides these 2, in the history of the college football playoff, has dropped. Didn't happen this time. Why? Because the committee wants Alabama in. And I think they also wanted to make sure there was an ACC representative, a full ACC representative. Remember, Notre Dame, member of the ACC in every other sport, not a full member of the ACC in football. They do have to play, I think it's 5 games every season. So they play an abbreviated ACC schedule, and they're not eligible for that ACC championship game. Not eligible for it. So, yeah, in the end, the committee was, I guess, consistent about being inconsistent, and I don't know what to say. as a Notre Dame fan. Miami probably should have been ranked ahead of Notre Dame the whole time. BYU, sorry, don't know what to tell you. You used to be independent. And this is just a quick note on all the people saying Notre Dame should join a conference. BYU used to be independent. They joined a conference because everybody's saying you got to join a conference. They lost to the conference champion. They are the number 2 team in the conference. Their only 2 losses are 1, a loss to the eventual conference champion in the regular season, and then a loss in the conference championship game, to which we're not supposed to penalize them for. Oh, but you're not named Alabama. You're not in the SEC. You get penalized. You're in the Big 12. They're a Power 4 conference. Everybody talking about, oh, JMU shouldn't get in, Tulane shouldn't get in. Again, we're going to talk about that in a second. Though they're not Power 4 conference members. BYU's a Power 4 conference member. They lost their conference championship game and got punished for it. That's a problem. Again, I think hit the nail on the head in this tweet. If Alabama drops to 10, like they probably should have, there's a buffer in between Notre Dame and Miami, and according to the committee's own reasoning, they don't then need to compare the head-to-head. And that means the ACC doesn't get a team in. Here's a bunch of teams and examples of times a conference champion has lost their conference championship game and then not made the playoff and been passed by an idle team. So this precedent of, oh, we never punish the conference championship losers. No, we have a lot. 2017 Auburn's probably the most glaring. Because they beat Georgia, then lost the SEC championship game and got jumped by a team they beat. So we didn't care about anything there. Again, Alabama beat Georgia earlier. Not a shield. Not something you can do. Kind of problematic. You can read this whole tweet. I think it's pretty good. It was Wisconsin in 2017. Not Penn State, by the way. Just a typo that they had here. This was actually Wisconsin, not Penn State there. I wanted to highlight that before everybody in the comments are like, oh, you're using faulty data. It was really Wisconsin. And it doesn't matter. All these teams got passed up by idle teams and got knocked out of the playoff by losing their conference championship game. Kind of rough. All right. I think I've got it off my chest. Any comments, chat? Am I crazy? I just feel like this has been wildly inconsistent, right? It just has, right? Okay. Let's move on to some other breaking news here. Everybody hates JMU and Tulane. We got Nick Saban yesterday? Was that yesterday? Maybe the day before? Called them a AAA teams, said they shouldn't be in the playoff. So we have this huge campaign now of, oh man, we should not have Tulane and James Madison. Notre Dame should have been in. What I think is really funny is it's all these talking heads doing this. Let's be honest. It feels like they're deflecting so they don't have to ask or answer the questions related to why did Alabama not drop? right? Let's all talk about Tulane and James Madison because they're clearly inferior teams this season to a Notre Dame or a BYU. Don't get mad at Alabama not dropping. Don't get mad at our wild inconsistencies everywhere else in the bracket. Pile on Tulane and James Madison. Beat up the little guy. Honestly, it's very frustrating to me. They did nothing wrong, right? Like, oh, we won our conference. Yay! The ACC screwed up. Woohoo! Gives us a new opportunity to get in. Screw you guys, is what everybody's saying from the rafters. That's ridiculous. Okay, let's just answer one question first. Should James Madison and Tulane be in the playoff this season? Well, by the rules, yes. Objectively, we can all agree that, yeah, Notre Dame is probably better than both of them. And would probably beat the pants off of both of them on a neutral field anytime. Heck, I think Notre Dame could go into James Madison or Tulane. I don't think they're scared. I mean, Notre Dame does have a win over Boise State, who's a conference champion. So, that's fun. I think it's pretty reasonable to say, yes, Notre Dame is a better team than those two teams. And therefore, if we're looking for the best teams in, but we're not. The rules are written. It's the 5 highest conference championships. It's not the playoffs' fault that the ACC screwed up. If the ACC doesn't screw up and Miami wins the ACC, guess what? Notre Dame's in. Haha. Woo. We got Tulane in. James Madison doesn't get in. Tulane, Oregon. We don't even have to deal with the replayed matchup of Tulane and Ole Miss. Everything's solved. It's not the playoffs' fault. Now, at a higher level, because I got people like Klatt, who normally I agree with. I got people like Saban saying they're a AAA team. They don't deserve to be here. Should the group of 5 have a path to the college football playoff? Or should we just make this a Power 4 playoff? Right? We're just kind of split the divisions up. First of all, they're all FBS. There is an FCS. There is the equivalent of AAA. Right? There's other divisions of football. Even within D1, right? And then you've got et cetera, et cetera. There's community college football, right? And nobody's putting them in the playoff. These teams, these non-Power 4 conference teams, they are in the same division of football, like the same tier. It's FBS, Bowl Series, which is funny because bowls might be going away. But they're not AAA teams. And my answer is absolutely, unequivocally yes. The Power 4 conferences should not be the only teams. You should not have to be in those tier of conferences, or Notre Dame, because Notre Dame's independence, everybody just bounces off on that. You don't need to be there. You need to have a path to getting into the playoff, access to the playoff, as a non-Power 4 team. Unequivocally, full stop, that needs to be happening. Why? All right, here we go. The reason why, in my opinion, is we need to reward the regular season, and we should not exclude an entire, really more than half, of the teams from having any chance at the finals regardless. Now, you may look at this year, and this is a fair criticism. This year, the group of 5 is not very good. Tulane's 11-2. James Madison even has a loss. And that loss that Tulane had, again, it just frustrates me to no end. They literally played Ole Miss this season, got destroyed, and now we're going to play them again. I mean, hey, I hope Tulane covers or beats them. Wouldn't that be a fun thing? But regardless, you may say this season, you're right. The group of 5 is not very good. But there have been many years where a group of 5 team has been good. There's been some good Cincinnati teams. There's been some good Boise State teams. There's been some good Utah teams. Wait, did everybody forget they used to not be in one of the power conferences? Oh, haha. How do you think Utah, who's ranked 15th, who the committee actually really liked this year, how do you think they were able to get into a power conference when they weren't? By winning big games. In fact, wait, who did they beat? Oh, they beat Nick Saban in Alabama. I'm going full cam for this. They beat Nick Saban and Alabama in a big bowl game, a Sugar Bowl game. They were not in one of the power conferences at the time. You have to let teams like that into the playoff. There has to be a path. And you know what? This season, I don't think Tulane and James Madison are going to win in the first round of the playoffs. But in a couple years, the next 5 years, I bet you there's a group of 5 team that comes along that's actually really good and can actually win a playoff game. A few years ago, Cincinnati beat Notre Dame in Notre Dame during the regular season, and that actually got them into the playoff. And they didn't have quite the same team. I think the year before's team was probably actually better for Cincinnati. But these group of 5 teams, group of 6, I guess it's now, they're not always bad. This year, I think is one of the weaker years in recent memory. But there have been good... that UCF team that rolled Auburn in a bowl game and then claimed a national championship. That was kind of stupid, let's be honest. But they went undefeated for multiple seasons, including winning big bowl games against tough SEC opponent. I would have loved to see that UCF team in a 12-team playoff with a chance. You got to give them a shot. And this whole thing about, oh, we don't like Cinderellas, or we don't like the worst teams getting in. It's a nice story, but towards the end, we want, Klatt had this take about March Madness, and he was like, yeah, well, you want, Duke and Kentucky and North Carolina at the end. You want Leitner hitting that shot. And I hate to break it to you, Joel, and he's even walked back on that and kind of admitted that that was a terrible take and that he worded it badly. But this idea that you want these really great teams, you know what? If Tulane made it to the national championship game this season, outside of the fan bases that they beat to get there, I don't think anybody'd have a problem. I think we'd all think it's pretty freaking awesome. We'd all be sitting there going, yeah, hell yeah, let's go Tulane. You made it to the championship game? We love Loyola Chicago, Sister Jean. Rest in peace, a legend. We all loved that team. Again, besides the teams that were playing them. If you were a fan of the team that was playing them. But we loved that they made it deep into the tournament. Did they win the national championship? No, but only one team wins the national championship every year. And because they had that run, now Loyola Chicago's a team that I look at every year. I'm like, oh yeah, I remember that run. I hope they do well again this year. And if you look back at teams like Utah. Cincinnati, by the way, in a power conference now. They would have never been invited to a power conference if they hadn't made runs and gotten into the playoff. Is James Madison about to become a bit of a power? I mean, they're only in the FBS for a couple years now, and they've been rolling. So, got to give them credit. In fact, there's kind of a fun fact for you. Indiana, number 1 team in the country. The only undefeated team in the country. Anybody know where their coach is from? Anybody? Anybody know where their coach is from? Oh, yeah. James Madison. Uh-oh. So, don't tell me this is AAA football. That's just... oh my gosh. Don't get me started. They're in the same division. They didn't used to be. Now they are. They're having a good year. Again, they're 12-1. Again, this isn't the strongest year for power group of 5 teams or group of 6 teams. But there have been good teams, and there's great players that come out of these schools. Kelsey brothers went to Cincinnati before they were in a power conference, and giving them an opportunity to get to the playoff, it's possible we see James Madison in one of these power conferences here in the future, because they've been having really a hell of a run the last few seasons. So don't get me started on they don't deserve here. That's you gotta let them in. You gotta let them in. And next season, are all of James Madison's players going to get poached in the portal? Yeah, it's possible. It's possible. But we're also seeing a lot of backups from the power schools deciding, I'm not going to get to play at Alabama. I'm making zero money because I'm third string. I'm going to go to a smaller school where I can play. That happens all the time. So, who's to say James Madison and Tulane can't get a couple of 5-star recruits that have been riding the bench at Indiana or Ohio State, right? Ohio State's, they feel like they get the top 4 receivers in every recruiting class. Not all of them are playing. Not all of them are playing. So you might be able to grab them. So, yeah. Tulane, James Madison, I don't think they're going to do anything this year. But this idea that we want to exclude all of the group of 6 teams for all time out of the playoff, I don't like that. Now, I am okay with maybe we make a rule and say, hey, if you're not in a power conference, you got to be ranked in maybe the top 14 or something, or top 15 or something, just so that, it's a pretty decent team. We know you had a good year. Because, again, the group of 6 this year was not particularly good. If you looked at, last year, group of 6, that Boise State team was much better than these Tulane and James Madison and whatnot. And that Boise State team, unfortunately, because of how the seeding works, they got a bye, and then they had to play a tough opponent, right? I think that Boise State team in a first game might have had a chance. So there's my take on the group of 6 teams. Man, we got to keep this rolling though, because there's still a lot to get to. We'd already talked a little bit about Notre Dame sitting out. I'm not going to get back to that. The future of bowl games though is interesting, and we haven't talked about that yet. Notre Dame sits out. And they weren't the only ones. I think there were close to 10 teams that sat out this year in bowl games. And what is the future of bowl games? Right? We already had players sitting out. That's been going on for a few years. And that's frustrating, right? As a viewer, you're sitting here and wondering how that would work out. If they were at full strength, right? It's tough to look at the end of the season and be like, oh, this team beat that team at the end of the year. They must have been better. Well, there was 4 starters sitting out or whatever. Now we have full teams sitting out. And I think I've got a list here. Let me pull it up. Apologies, I wasn't quite ready with this list. It's here somewhere. Please hold. All right, here we go. Here's teams. There was a tweet, College Sports Only on Twitter, put this out, and there's one little typo here. So Notre Dame, Kansas State, these are notable teams. Florida State, Auburn, UCF, we already were talking about them a minute ago. Iowa State, Florida State, Auburn, UCF, Baylor, Rutgers, Temple. You put Rutgers here twice. Also, a point here, Temple didn't technically opt out. They just got somebody else picked up the bowl game first, said yes first, essentially. But these are Kansas State. I mean, these are blue blood programs that are choosing not to play in bowl games. What's the future? What's the future of bowl games? Rick Neuheisel actually had a really interesting take I saw on the Dan Patrick's show. He said, what if we made bowl games? Because they're exhibition games, right? What if we made that the first week of the season? Like a week 0? And I'm going to be honest, I don't hate that idea. Bowl games have lost a lot of their luster. We have a 12-team playoff, and that incorporates those like New Year's Six bowls, which those are the bowl games that anybody really has always cared about, right? Sugar Bowl, Fiesta Bowl, Rose Bowl, right? Those are the big games. Those are the games we really care about. Do we really care about the Pop-Tarts Bowl? Pop-Tarts Bowl, to be honest, is probably the only one that people outside of the New Year's Six really do actually still care about because it's hysterical. And the marketing around it is really funny, and we kind of enjoy that. Maybe you liked the Barstool Sports Bowl, or Gronk hosted a bowl game this year. You know, it's really just like a bunch of these marketing things. It's not prestigious like the New Year's Six are, right? Sugar Bowl, etc. To me, I do think there may need to be a point where we say, hey, no more bowl games at the end of the year. We're going to do them at the beginning of the season. Do it as the first week. And I think it's actually a decent idea because the bowl games are going to get to pick, in that scenario, really interesting matchups that they actually really want. So from a branding perspective, if you're a bowl game, you're going to like that. Now, a comment, whole purpose of bowl games is centered around Christmas and New Year's, but the playoff is now centered around Christmas and New Year's, so you don't need it anymore, right? You don't need all the bowl games around Christmas because, well, like tonight, we've got a game. I think if bowl games have to survive, again, I'd probably just do away with them. I don't know that you necessarily need them, or at least don't worry about them. Like, teams are not participating. I think it's a reasonable idea to say, let's do them the week 1. Let's do a bunch of exhibition games week 1 as like a little preseason and get some really cool matchups out there. And you know what? Maybe it'll help us actually have some semblance of an idea for week 1 AP poll. You know, like, don't rank any of the teams. Wait for the bowl games. Bowl games already have all this stuff. There you go. No, this wouldn't affect conference championships. Conference championships would still be there. We're just getting rid of bowl games, which are the exhibition games at the end. So keep conference championships. There's some things you could do with the schedule, with conference championships and how you do those auto bids and all that kind of thing, in order to kind of stretch out that playoff scenario. But bowl games, I think if they're going to have to survive, if these brands want them to survive, I think they may need to consider moving them to the beginning of the season. I don't think it's a crazy idea. To be honest, if I was to give a prediction, where does this all end up? Bowl games are probably done. Conferences are considering getting rid of the conference championships as well. I think that would be a bad idea, but bowl games are probably done. So it's fun for me to think about how could they maybe continue to survive. I personally, I would say conference championships, I'm even a little iffy on. If you go watch the video from last week or the live stream where we broke down exactly how I would fix college football, I left them in. But if we're getting more wild and wacky than the scenario I was showing, I was just trying to keep everything kind of the same, not expand or wildly change format, just a few small tweaks that I think could really fix things. Conferences are talking about getting rid of the conference championships anyways, which then opens up, I think, if you get rid of the conference championships, then I really do like the, Big Ten's proposed a similar idea. I know Klatt's talked about this similar idea. A lot of people are talking about it, of having like a play-in week where you take, the 6 to 8 teams that are like kind of on the outside looking into the official 12-team playoff, and you have them all play each other, and then, you take those 4, match it up with either the top 8 or the top 12, and you get either a 16 or a 12-team playoff. If you're going to get rid of conference championships and we're getting that drastic with things, I think a play-in like that probably makes the most sense. You expand the number down a ways, but you still reward the top end in that scenario. And we do away with at least a little less of this committee being all over the place, right? Right. We do a little less with the subjectivity. We actually get to play some games. And if you look at the rankings this year with that kind of a scenario, you're telling me you don't want to see like Notre Dame, Utah, Vandy, BYU, Texas, USC. Like, those would be fun games. We'd all sign up for those games, and the winners of those games all go to the playoff. That's not a terrible idea. Again, that's if you're getting drastic and we're not playing conference championship games. So that's my take on the playoff. Let's preview tonight's game. What do you say? What do you say we look at tonight's game? Alabama, Oklahoma. I know we got a couple of chatters here. Who's your picks tonight? I want to know, just, we're going to poll the chat here real quick. Do we think it's Alabama or Oklahoma? Give them a second to decide if they're going to answer. Personally, I think Oklahoma's going to win this game. They're favored. I think the line moved to -1. Oklahoma -1. Oklahoma beat them in the regular season. Let's go look at that game, because it actually is a very interesting study on what happened here. So Oklahoma wins by 2, right? This is a close game. Okay. 23-21. But what's kind of odd is if we look at this team stats, everything is Alabama. Yards per play, even rushing yards. And Alabama can't run the football. Like, they're terrible. Passing yards, for sure. Total yards, obviously. First downs, almost doubled their first downs, right? They were better on 3rd down, better on 4th down. They ran more total plays. They had less punts, technically, less penalties, but they had 2 fumbles lost and an interception thrown. They dominated time of possession. So Alabama really dominated this game and found a way to lose it. And it's really hard to beat a team twice, so you might think, let's put money on Alabama. I'm not so sure. This was an Oklahoma team. John Mateer, quarterback, was coming off an injury. And don't get me wrong, Oklahoma's offense is quite terrible. Right? Their defense is what's carried them to this point. Oklahoma's offense is not good. But their quarterback is pretty good. And when he's played and when he's been healthy, they have been able to move the ball. But they're very, very Mateer dependent. He didn't have a particularly good game in this game. For Oklahoma to win again, they probably need Mateer to have a much better game than 138 yards passing. It's not even 10 yards of completion. Pretty rough. But he was coming off of an injury. I think Oklahoma does it again. This Alabama team, the other thing to note is there is definitely a way to beat Alabama that I think Oklahoma knew about, and that's how they were able to still pull it off. But that has definitely been shown the last few weeks. And that is, they can't run the ball at all. They're terrible at it. So, if you can, sell out to stop the pass, drop a lot of people in coverage, make it really difficult, you're going to force turnovers. They did last matchup, 3 of them. Now, 2 of those are fumbles, so that's not necessarily pass coverage. But one of them's an interception. You're going to force some turnovers. And Alabama doesn't really run the ball very well. So you can kind of cheat and stop their pass. If you stop Alabama's pass game, that offense does nothing. And, that Alabama team that I saw against Auburn, The Alabama team I saw against Georgia definitely feels beatable for Oklahoma in this game tonight. I'm really excited for it. Even though, again, I still think Alabama should not have been in this playoff. Rewind the stream, go look at it. But I think at the end, I think Oklahoma's going to beat Alabama tonight. I think Mateer's healthy, and I think that's a big difference. And I do think that Oklahoma defense is going to stop Alabama, like, in its tracks. I don't think Alabama's going to be able to move the ball. I don't think they're going to have the yards they had last time, and I think Oklahoma's offense has improved since last time. I don't know. Let me know in the comments down below what you think. I'm gonna end the show there. We've been live for about an hour, which is about how long we normally do. There's some coaching stuff to talk about. I'll probably go live tomorrow with some talks about that. Although we'll see. It's a weekend. We might wait till Monday to talk about some of the coaching stuff. Penn State did find a coach, so that's cool. You know, they're not coachless. But now Michigan's looking for one, which was a wild turn of events. So thanks for everybody for stopping in. Really appreciate it. I like this live format a lot. Sooners in a close one. Yeah, I don't think it's gonna be a blowout. I think it could be though. I don't know. I got this weird feeling Oklahoma's gonna take it to them tonight. But we'll see. We'll see. It's gonna be a good game. Probably. Hopefully. It's going to be interesting no matter what happens. I guess if you're the committee, you're probably just like the biggest Alabama fans possible tonight because you want to justify the fact that they're in, right? Like, oh man, I hope they just roll Oklahoma and nobody can get mad at us. You know, oh, well, they were obviously a really good team. You know, if Alabama gets blown out tonight, that is not going to be good for the committee. But yeah, thanks everybody for hanging out. If you just jumped in right now, I apologize. The show's ending. But I'm going to be live much more consistently moving forward. Appreciate the love in the comments and in the lively chat today. We had a good chat today. Yeah, thanks everybody. And